Yeah, the two good-looking guys back on the set now. Eric, you're kicking it in the Chargers jersey there. You're a Southern Cowboy?
Yep, I grew up in Orange County, and since LA doesn't have any teams anymore, you got to lean to the south in San Diego. Although I was a Viking fan out there on the West Coast.
There you go.
I do hope someday we get a football team back in Los Angeles. Rumor has it there are a few people that live out there. Yeah, I don't want the purple out there.
Yeah, let's just hope it's not the Vikings moving to the West. That would definitely be a tragedy there. But keeping with the flow of the show, we're going to talk some more matchups. Eric's going to hang out for another segment here. Why don't we just talk about the San Diego Chargers right now, since Eric has the jersey on. Atlanta traveling to San Diego. Now, the Atlanta Falcons are a red-hot squad, led, of course, by the rookie that's probably going to win the Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, Matt Ryan, playing at a very high level. Last week, taking it to the Carolina Panthers at home, playing well, getting a hellified running game from Michael Turner. They're traveling to San Diego, where the Chargers, Eric, are a little bit lost at the wheel right now. What do you think is going to happen in this matchup, where really both of these two teams need a win?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers are on life support, but they play in the AFC West, so they still have a pulse. I mean, That's not a good division. But you're right. I mean, right now they don't have a compass. I mean, they're adrift at sea, if you will. And if they don't get their act in gear, they're going to be at Sea World here pretty quickly down there in San Diego. Norv Turner, I mean, he did a great job last year, but it looks like the same old Norv this year. They've already fired Ted Cottrell, their defensive coordinator, former Viking D coordinator. Ron Rivera, the former Bears defensive coordinator, is now running the show. But they have too much talent to be floundering like they are. I know they lost a game they should not have lost early at Denver because of Ed Hockley's botch call. But other than that, they can only blame themselves. I mean, I watched the Indy game last Sunday night, and they lose at the gun on the kick by Adam Vinatieri. But, you know, I love wearing the LT jersey, but I wonder if LaDainian Tomlinson has slipped just a notch. He doesn't seem to be the LT of old.
I definitely concur with what you're saying there, Eric. I mean, you watch him in that Sunday Nighter. He just doesn't have that elite gear that used to get him around the corner. He's getting pulled down from behind. Guys are tripping him up. And after the game is over, even more so than what he looks like on the field, when you look at him off the field, Cat is totally dejected. And you remember back to that AFC Championship game last year, where he sat there during the entire second half like he was watching his Vizio with his visor on, sitting on his couch at home, and he didn't play in possibly the biggest game of his life. I think it's okay to question his heart, and it's also okay to question him from a fantasy perspective, because it certainly looks like he's slipping.
Well, and before we move on, let's not forget Michael the Burner Turner was his backup.
Right.
He's getting a chance in Atlanta and has had a remarkable season, and I'm happy for the Falcons. Last season was a nightmare with the Mike Vick fiasco and Bobby Petrino snaking out of town before the season even ended. I'm ecstatic for Arthur Blank to see this team and this franchise back on track. And who would have thunk it? Maybe the Vick thing in the long run has been good for this franchise, because they would not have drafted Matt Ryan if Mike Vick were still around.
Absolutely. And I mean, Falcons players going forward, these guys are fantasy stalwarts. I mean, Michael Turner, 13 rushing touchdowns on the season. You got to get him into your lineup, and you can go ahead and feel free to start the Falcons in the passing game. Matt Ryan's a great play this weekend against San Diego. Their pass defense is last in the league. So I think Atlanta has a great chance to go in and just rip the heart out of San Diego here. They seem like a beaten squad, and if they lose this week, it's clear they've really packed it in for the season. So another huge game to talk about here, Eric. The Carolina Panthers traveling to Green Bay to square off with the Packers. Now, the Packers, 2 weeks ago, they held the Bears to 3 points, and then on Monday night, they just got bitch slapped in New Orleans. They allowed 51 points, the most ever scored by the Saints. What's going on in Green Bay?
They played like they spent Sunday night and early Monday morning on Bourbon Street. They played like they had a few too many hurricanes.
That's right.
I mean, the Packer defense was just bad. Now, Drew Brees is a gunslinger. He's pinpoint with those passes. He may set a passing yardage record and break Dan Marino's mark. So I know in fantasy leagues, Drew Brees is the guy right now.
Fantastic.
But there's no reason you can go, like you said, from allowing 3 to 51. I mean, and Aaron Rodgers was clearly off his game. And let's face it, over there to the east, all those people that put the cheese wedges on their head, they're looking at the AFC East standings, and the Jets are 8-3, coming off road wins at New England, at Tennessee. Brett Favre now being mentioned as an MVP candidate in the AFC. Meanwhile, the Packers are struggling. They're 5-6. They got to win this game against Carolina.
Absolutely.
Because Minnesota or Chicago is going to win, so they got to keep pace with the winner.
If they lose this game, as you mentioned, they're going to be 2 games back from the division. So this is a huge game, but let's not forget that they're playing a Carolina team that needs a win here too. Carolina is supposed to be taking this division by the throat right now. They're supposed to be coming off of a fat win last week against the aforementioned Falcons, but wait a minute. They got beat by the Falcons last week. Stop the presses. They need a win here too. So this game to me has a lot of intrigue. And it's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be a hard-fought game. Steve Smith draws a pretty tough matchup in the secondary here against Al Harris. Harris likes to get real physical. That has caused the undersized Smith some problems before at the line of scrimmage. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares. And D'Angelo Williams, this cat is on fire right now. He's 6th in the league in rushing yardage, over 100 yards in 4 straight games, 5 TDs in that stretch. He can be in your fantasy lineup as well. But, Eric, this game, I don't know who to pick here. It's just going to be a hellified game to sit back and watch.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this right now. I think the NFC South is the best division in the NFC. Everybody's thinking it's the East, but as the season goes on, I'm not a believer in the Eagles. The worst team in the South is New Orleans at 6-5. Then you got Atlanta with 7 wins, and then you have Tampa Bay and Carolina right there near the top. So you're right. It's a monster game, and I think the one thing about the Panthers is I believe they play Tampa Bay in a Monday night game a week from this Monday. So they can't look ahead because they can't take Green Bay lightly, but they know they're going to have a showdown game coming up with the Buccaneers. So John Fox against Mike McCarthy. If the Packers lose, they're in deep trouble. If the Panthers lose, they're in trouble, but they still have a wild card option.
Yeah, they still have a way out for sure. But this game right here is exactly why we love the NFL Sunday Ticket, because this game may or may not be played here locally, possibly because of the Packers angle. But if it's not, you definitely want to watch this game on the ticket because, compared to the other 2 games we're about to get into.
Well, and it's December football in Green Bay. And, Jesse, you and I think, are on the same page. I dream someday of seeing the Minnesota Vikings back out in the elements like the Packers and Bears play.
That's right. That's the way it should be.
That's where they belong. And I just hope we in the state of Minnesota can realize how valuable the Vikings are to the city of Minneapolis, the Twin Cities Metro, the state of Minnesota, the upper Midwest, and we can fix this stadium dilemma because it's embarrassing, quite frankly, that we're running the risk that this team might pull up stakes and go elsewhere.
Yeah,
they are the most popular sports team in this area, hands down.
Not even close. Not even close. So we've got to keep the Vikes in town. We want to get them a new stadium. But for now, we're struggling through all these bailouts and financial woes. So we press on doing our show here on Cable Access, and we dive into the next matchup, which is Kansas City at Oakland. So the show takes a little bit of a snag right here from 2 fantastically fat fantasy matchups to talk about to a couple ones that, aren't necessarily so appealing. And this one here, KC at Oakland. We had a chance, Eric, back in the preseason to go and watch Kansas City play out there when they were in Wisconsin for their training camp. And we really got a sense from looking at this squad close up that they weren't going to be a very good team. They aren't a very good team, although this week it appears that they're, they've got a chance to win at least against Oakland.
Yeah, the one thing you could say about the AFC West, it's a lot like the NFC North. These teams have been playing each other twice a year since the early 60s.
Right.
Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos, that quartet, they bang on each other pretty good, like the teams in the NFC North do.
Right.
So this is a rivalry game. Now, granted, it means nothing. Draft positioning is at stake. But what the Raiders did last week, going into Denver, and Mike Shanahan despises the Oakland Raiders and Al Davis. They were at home. They were coming off 2 big road wins, and the Raiders win 31-10. I know the new coach, the Cable guy, Tom Cable. I think he told his team, look, we need to start going out and winning these kind of games again. Jesse, you and I are old enough to remember when the Raiders were a power. And they'd come to town, and you'd lock up the house, hide the women, hide the children. They were a band of pirates.
That's right.
They were renegades.
That's right.
And they don't have that mystique anymore. But Maybe they'll get it back. I don't think they will anytime soon, but that was a big win. I got to give them some props.
Oh, it was a big win for Oakland. They got Darren McFadden going in that game. He scored 2 times. So on a fantasy tip, you might want to watch him here. He could potentially make a play, although it's a little bit risky because Justin Fargas is still getting the lion's share of the carries for this offense. So out of this matchup, I think the best running back play here is probably going to be Larry Johnson. We saw him last week doing some damage, making some hay. The squad is, taking a few small baby steps forward under the leadership of Tyler Thigpen, and you tend to think in these types of games you might get a player who pops off from a fantasy perspective in a meaningless game. In my opinion, that would have that potentially could be Larry Johnson, who has been linked in rumors as a possible guy who could be getting released at the end of the year. And I've even heard maybe the Patriots have interest in Larry Johnson. So Larry wants to perform here, and looking at the rest of the guys on these squads, I mean, these two teams just suck.
And I will say this, I don't really feel sorry for pro athletes. They have a great life. They make a great paycheck.
Right.
They're playing a game for a living. But I do feel for Tony Gonzalez. It's too bad the Chiefs could not have moved him at the trading deadline, because he could have helped somebody and they could have got something in return.
The final matchup of this segment with Eric is Miami at St. Louis. We won't spend much time on this because St. Louis completely sucks, and Miami should win this game down in St. Louis. I mean, realistically, if Steven Jackson starts, you could potentially play him. So we taped the show here early this week. You want to watch the waiver wire or watch the wire late to see if Jackson is active. If he is active, you could consider playing him against Miami, but I think Miami's going to roll here. I love Ronnie Brown in this matchup. What do you think? I mean, you got to like Miami. You got to like anybody against St. Louis.
I do. I mean, I love what Chad Pennington and Ronnie Brown and that Wildcat and Tony Sperano, the new coach down there, Bill Parcells. I think they've done a great job. St. Louis, in a way, they've been kind of a mystery team. They started out horribly. They got rid of Scott Linehan. And
bam, bam.
Yeah, you're gone. And then Jim Haslett comes in. They get some monster wins over Washington and Dallas. And then all of a sudden there's talk that Haslett's going to get the job. Steven Jackson,
so
Bulger,
fast.
these guys. Yeah, exactly, because they've reverted.
Right.
And last week they get 3 at home. They got just waxed by the New York Jets a few weeks ago in the Meadowlands. So St. Louis is a train wreck, and I think they're going to have to blow that thing up and start from scratch again.
That's right. That's right. So we want to take just a moment to tell you about the website, testosteronesports.com. You're going to want to come on there as soon as the show wraps up. We do the Fat Chat every single week. We want to help you with your fantasy matchups. Testosteronesports.com. We're going to be back for one final segment right after this.